Start now. Good day and welcome to this Smarter Health Seminar. I'm Shirley Fenton, Managing Director of the Waterloo Institute for Health Informatics Research. Thank you for joining us today for our first seminar in 2009. I guess I can still say Happy New Year. I'd like to welcome our web viewers and Ontario Telehealth Network sites. Just to let you know, this seminar is being recorded and is being broadcast over the web. We ask that you hold your questions to after the seminar presentation so that we can get a real or virtual mic to you. A very warm welcome to our guest speaker, Mr. Wayne Goodbranson. I will introduce Wayne more fully in a minute. These seminars are hosted by the Waterloo Institute for Health Informatics Research, the Lawson Health Research Institute, and the National Institutes for Health Informatics. I'd like to acknowledge our seminar series sponsors, Borden Ladner Gervais, McKesson, and Healthcare Information Management and Communications Canada. We could not host these seminars without their support. I have a few brief announcements. Our next Smarter Health Seminar will be on Wednesday, February the 25th. Our guest speaker is Mr. Brendan Seaton, who is the president of ehealth. And the title of Brendan's presentation is Health Informatics, Tomorrow's Industry. So he will look at the state of health ICT sectors in Canada and discuss national and global opportunities. For those of you that are present in the room, we have a number of flyers at the back that are announcing our events for this term. We have a series of workshops in eHealth risk management, privacy, security, and eHealth risk management. We also are holding two health informatics boot camps, one that is strictly focused on HIM professionals, health information management professionals, and one which will be our regular boot camp. So one boot camp's in May and one boot camp is in June. So if you're interested in those events, please see more details on our website. The Smarter Health seminars this year will focus on health informatics and the eHealth industry. And who better to kick off this series than our speaker today? So the schedule for today is as follows. Wayne will speak for about 45 minutes. This will be followed by a facilitated discussion. Please signal when you have a question and we will get a microphone to you. And we invite our web and teleconference viewers to please send in their questions as well. It is my pleasure to introduce Wayne Goodbranson. I had the good fortune to first meet Wayne on the 2008 Canadian eHealth trade mission to Europe. I learned a lot about the ICT and eHealth industry in Canada from the presentations that Wayne gave on the trade mission. As background, Wayne Goodbranson is the president and CEO of the Brandon Group, which is an independent global industry analyst and strategic marketing consulting firm focused on the ICT, eHealth, outsourcing, and green IT sectors. Since establishing the firm in 1990, Wayne has positioned Brandon as a leading provider of custom consulting services, assisting ITC companies in areas of planning, marketing, and partnering. In 2004, Wayne expanded Brandon's business by creating the multi-client subscription and data products divisions. He also launched an ambitious initiative to raise the visibility of Canadian ICT sector with the Brandon 300 listing. Today, the Brandon 300 is the most comprehensive database of privately held and publicly traded ICT companies ranked on total revenues in Canada. In our discussions with Wayne, we know that his interests very closely align with the research that we do here at the University of Waterloo and what we think needs to be done in healthcare. Wayne has garnered the respect of the industry in Canada, and most importantly, he has a wealth of knowledge, understanding, and expertise in the ICT industry, which he can bring to bear on the eHealth sector. So without any further ado, please welcome Wayne Goodbranson.
Well, thank you very much, Shirley, and I want to take this opportunity to thank the Waterloo Institute for inviting me to be here and to speak to you here physically and to all of you throughout the province of Ontario that are online, and I've taken the opportunity to listen to my presentation today. I'm delighted to be here. This is my second presentation in a university lecture class in the last 25 years. I typically give these to the business people. And so as I was putting together the presentation, I had to acknowledge the fact that in the audience would be students in various different disciplines, people that are clinicians are working directly in the healthcare industry. Third, people from potentially healthcare or eHealth companies themselves, and also senior academia that are very interested in conducting and continuing to conduct research in this area. So it's quite, no doubt, is quite a widespread audience that are watching today. But I look forward to the challenge. And anybody that knows me, I typically prepare presentations of 80 foils or more and inundate you with data. I've actually resisted that temptation here. I'm going to give you some data, but I'm also going to give you a perspective that I personally have on healthcare delivery, eHealth, and the changing landscape. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you. Just before I start, by the way, just quick show of hands if I could. I'm looking out in the audience, and my market research skills tells me that a good selection of you are in fact students, but I could be wrong. So how many of you are students okay, so about 2/3 of the people, and the rest of you are faculty or industry? Industry? Healthcare industry? How about interested staff? Okay, good. So we have a collection of interested staff as well as people that work in the industry itself. Great. My topic today is informatics and the continuum of care, the changing landscape, and must be. And I'm going to cover, by way of agenda, give you an overall introduction, talk to you a little bit, or give you an overall introduction to Branham Group and who we are, talk a little bit about eHealth in Canada, some market data and trends. Keep in mind we're an industry analyst firms and we're always tracking the industry from that perspective. Talk about the eHealth vendor landscape, because the focus of our practice in many cases actually is on the ICT vendors themselves and helping them understand how they can bring more value to the end users out there. Talk about the continuum of care, and I'll get into that later in the presentation, and then a little bit about looking ahead. In fact, looking ahead will be dispersed all the way through my presentation. I will probably stick to my knitting in terms of the presentation and then go off topic. And somebody, perhaps Mary Atkinson, my VP and eHealth lead over there, if you could wave your hand, she'll probably put me back on track and say, no, get back on track. But by way of an introduction, Branham Group is a Ottawa-based, soon to have an office in Waterloo. So if anybody's looking for a job, please talk to Mary. We're looking forward to setting up shop in April this year. In fact, we're going to have a launch event on April 3rd somewhere in Waterloo, perhaps Kitchener, I don't know. But we're based in Ottawa, and we're an internationally, globally focused industry analyst firm and strategic marketing consultancy. Our target, our clients, are information communication technology companies that have either products and or services focusing on a variety of vertical markets. eHealth represents about 30 to 33% of our overall revenue, but for years we've been doing work with a lot of companies around the world. 65% of our revenues are outside of Canada. A good percentage of those are in the United States, secondarily Europe, and thirdly Pacific Rim. And so we work, 50% of our revenue is generated from large companies, the likes of an IBM, Computer Associates, Adobe, and so on, Siemens, GE Healthcare, AGFA Belgium, and a really interesting net new eHealth player called Intercomponentware out of Waldorf, Germany, that has a very comprehensive set of new products. We like to call them a 3.0 player. Many of the players in Canada are sort of point solutions that offer a response to a specific thing or a specific requirement. Intercomponentware is really cool, and they are, it's a company that was started by one of the co-founders of SAP, Dieter Hoff. We have, by design, roughly 25 people. We're a very high-end agency. 25% are mid-cap companies and 25% are small-cap companies. And I'll give you an example of some of the things we've done, just so you know the caliber of work we've done in the past. For many of you, you obviously know IBM, and I certainly remember the day when IBM ushered in the world of e-business. And we had the pleasure of working on a $1 million contract with IBM launching e-business around the world. And here is a Canadian player working with senior management of IBM and Somers and delivering that right around the world. We do some really interesting, cool stuff. Can't send out a press release on that. We'd be fired if we did it. And please don't share it outside the hall to halls. No, I'm just kidding. We have 3 core businesses. Custom consulting, where we plan, market, and partner. So do a lot of strategic planning, a lot of market research, competitive intelligence work, and a lot of partnering. We'll help identify, qualify acquisitions for our clients that want to expand through non-organic methodologies. So for instance, one of the leading eHealth professional services companies in Canada, XWave, some of you may have heard of that company, XWave, they were initially started through a series of acquisitions. Our firm was behind the identification of those acquisitions for Stephen Wetmore and what was formerly known as Nutel. So that's the kind of really nifty, cool stuff we do behind the scenes, and people don't know that we do it. By the way, RIM, as you all know, is here. When I'm a diehard BlackBerry kind of guy. I think I shut it down at 3 o'clock in the morning and opened it up again at 4 o'clock in the morning. But we were instrumental, by the way, in helping RIM expand to another part of Canada, Halifax. So we worked very closely with the Premier of Nova Scotia and Jim Basile to do that. So that's sort of an example of close to home. We created about 5 years a whole multi-client stream in the area of eHealth. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time on eHealth in a second. Outsourcing. Many believe, because of preeminence of India and the Philippines and Pakistan and so on, that Canada has no role to play in outsourcing. Far from it. There is a whole move toward world sourcing, and Canada has to have a strategy to play in that marketplace. We also have a wireline and wireless practice, and we have a green IT practice as well. In addition to that, we also sell a host of data, the Brand 300, eHealth data, and also outsourcing directory. And by the way, the 2 products that if you want, and send me your business card or contacts, this is the Brand 300, a hard copy. It comes out March 31st. It's a listing of the top 250 ICT companies in Canada, Canadian. And this is the brochure. It's online, by the way, of outsourcing companies in Canada. So those are the kind of data products that we have. Okay. Excuse me. Our eHealth practice is led by Mary Atkinson, which she's here, and I just introduced her. Excuse me. We target in our practice exclusively eHealth vendors, companies that are focused on bringing top of grade eHealth solutions for the healthcare marketplace. Now, the healthcare marketplace is a very interesting vertical. It's quite different than all the other verticals that we work with in terms of procurement and practices and so on, and I'll get into that throughout my presentation. The eHealth practice is globally focused, although the bulk of what we do right now is Canada, and the reason why is every country's healthcare system is slightly different. Ours is certainly different from the United States. It's certainly probably more relevant or comparable to countries in Europe, for instance. We do provide our complete slate of planning, marketing, and partnering services to there. And we launched this year a brand new comprehensive subscription program for our vendor clients, right? Although we wouldn't turn away end users, but it's typically targeted towards ICT vendors. And what we do is every month we put together a very comprehensive analysis on an individual province of what's happening. Because as you know, in Canada, the mandate for eHealth or healthcare delivery is a provincial mandate as defined in Section 92 of the British North American Act, or Section 92. I used to be a political science major graduate, and I forget now, it's 35 years ago. So we have an eHealth practice covering that. We also put very comprehensive reports together on topical subjects such as chronic disease management. And if you've been tracking what's going on in Ontario, there's a lot of noise in around chronic disease management, diabetes. The incidence of type 2 diabetes is on an astronomical rise. And we're all trying to understand, in addition to that, chronic disease, how we can deal with it and how ICT can help. We're also doing work in analyzing Aboriginal health, telehealth, home care, and I'll get into some of that in the continuum of care. And we also have a telephone inquiry service. So here's the Brand 300 I showed you before. We're going to do our 16th issue. The date is March 31st. It's published by the by Backbone. It's a hard copy. So if any one of you have any interest in learning more about ICT companies that you may want to get a job with, that's a good source. All the venture capitalists use it out there in the marketplace as well. And this is our outsourcing capabilities guide. This is also online, by the way. You just have to go to brandomoutsourcing.com, and all the firms are listed there as well. what's very interesting about outsourcing is, will it happen, and will healthcare engage outsourcing? And that's something of an additional piece of research we're going to be looking into. There are some constraints in terms of privacy of information and some country barriers, but it has to happen. We've done some privileged research for specific clients in that area. We want to genericize it and bring that out a little bit. So definitions, just before we get started, we talk about ehealth, and ehealth is all about digitization and integration of data, capturing it and integrating it. And it's that digitization, integration of healthcare processes using information and communication technology. And when we talk about an eHealth vendor, it's a company that is not necessarily exclusively, but partially focused on delivering specific ICT solutions for the healthcare industry. Quite often there's a definitional issue regarding EHR, EMR, EPRs, and of course by country there's different definitions and approaches to this as well. But at a very high level, EHR is a very national system to be put in place that's very patient-centric. EMR is very provider-centric, such as the physician using it, and EPR is very facility or system-centric. I won't go into all the definitions, but I just wanted to let you know that there are a lot of acronyms in the healthcare industry, too many, and like the ICT sector, there's a number of them out there, so I may be using some of these terms interchangeably. So what I wanted to do first is give you some sort of feeling for the size of the market. And I don't know how many of you have seen this level of data. And it's not detailed. We have, what is it, Marion, a 600-page report we produced last year. But I'm going to give you a few slides. The Canadian Institute for Health Information, CIHI, indicates that in the last full fiscal year, the total expenditure in public spend in healthcare in total, not e-health, but healthcare, is $113 billion. We estimate, by the way, that the total private public spend in Canada is roughly $140 billion. And when you look at the table down below, that breaks it out in terms of what the estimated IT budget is by province, and some calculation by population IT budget per person. So you can see that the Alberta spends more per person than any other province, and secondarily, Ontario and Quebec. But what's really interesting, and I don't know how many people realize this, the total expenditure on healthcare in Canada, if you package that up as a company, it would be listed as the top 10 company on the Fortune 500 list. Healthcare is the largest single market in Canada in terms of total expenditure. I find that interesting, and I still find that interesting after 4 or 5 years, because we do and have done and continue to do a lot of research in other vertical markets, but healthcare is the largest single marketplace and industry vertical out there, to the size that it could be a Fortune 500 size company. In terms of split, ladies and gentlemen, roughly 70% is public sector split, roughly 30% on private. Yes, we do have elements of private healthcare in Canada, typically dental and private clinics and so on. So that's captured all in this area. So it's roughly a 70-30 split. So for those that think that we don't have any private dimension to our healthcare spend in totality, you're fundamentally wrong. We do, right? Now, interesting comparison, by the way. I met with one of the senior people at Harvard recently in San Mateo, and he's a researcher in healthcare. And he said, you know what, Wayne, most Americans don't know this, but we spend 25% more per capita basis on a private-oriented system where we could have full universal health care in the United States. It's fascinating. It really is fascinating. And the dynamic of the healthcare system in the United States is radically different, as you know. I remember breaking my ankle playing hockey in Lake Placid. There's that hockey analogy again for me. And I was so nervous giving my Visa card. In fact, I wouldn't have any medical health done to me, and I just got a bottle of scotch and some Tylenols. And I lived through one evening while the other guys went to the final game at the rink in Lake Placid. But it just makes me so nervous comparatively, and you're so comfortable here in Canada. But The point is that the Americans could actually have total 100% universal health care at 25% less of what they're spending on the total health care. And that delta, by the way, is really driven by the insurance industry down there. Now, I wanted to go through some top eHealth trends to set the stage a little bit. There is an increasing consolidation of vendors in the acute care marketplace, which is hospital. There is a huge consolidation. Now, keep in mind that this is not exact, but the Canadian market is so centralized from a procurement point of view. There's roughly 100 people that sign checks. It's interesting. Here's the largest vertical market in Canada in terms of overall expenditure, and there's probably 100 people in Canada that sign checks for purchase of ICT goods and services. And that's because the industry in Canada is highly regionalized. You know, there's provinces, there's territories, there's the federal government. The federal government represents about $5 to $6 billion of the total industry, and that covers off, you know, the RCMP, Correctional Services, DOD, Indian Northern Affairs. There's 1 million people in Canada, by the way, that are not covered by provincial insurance. I don't know how many of you know that. 750,000 of which are, in fact, Native populations. But because of that, and because of the procurement process, there's a heavy consolidation of significant vendors, and I'm going to show you some of those later on in some of our data. So there's bigger wins, but fewer winners. And I don't know how many of you are following what's going on in Ontario in terms of the chronic disease management and the whole diabetes registry thing. The RFP hasn't come out and hit the street yet, but there's 2 or 3 major consortia that are going after it. It's no longer a game for the small vendor, which is actually sad, right? It is actually sad because still the hotbed of innovation in any ICT environment are the small companies, right? They are the Web 2.0, Web 3.0 application vendors that really need to get their cool stuff in there. And you'll see later in some of the data, some of the stuff that hospitals are using is really somewhat old stuff, right? I know you're laughing over there. A good friend of mine works in the bowels of the Ottawa Hospital, and they received a paper from us that we did. It was a white paper on SOA for Sun, and it was a completely objective paper written by us. And he calls me up and said, "Wayne, oh, this is your company." I said, "Yes, it is." And he said, "Well, this is not going to get me any money to replace my Commodore 64. And he was just joking, but it was tongue-in-cheek, and absolutely right. And you know, this industry has been underinvested, right? And there's a lot more at stake. The majority of provinces, by the way, have moved from implementation or planning to the actual implementation of EHR, which is really cool. And for those that don't know what an eHealth record is all about, I crystallize it this way. I'm 51 years of age, although there's not a history of heart disease in my family. I'm from Ottawa, and if I have a heart attack in Vancouver, you know, having a national or pan-Canadian EHR environment would allow access to critical data to help me within 3 hours. And we don't have that in place yet, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, it won't be in place until 2015 or 2016. And that really makes me nervous, by the way. And I'll get into some of the issues regarding privacy that really bug me, right? In fact, I fundamentally believe, by the way, my financial data is more secret than my medical data. I want you to know I have heart problems. And I don't care who knows that, because hopefully you'll help me if I drop on the floor. But so we're moving in that direction. We do expect, by the way, an increased awareness and utilization of EMR at the physician office level, which is really encouraging. Right now, there's only upwards of 20% penetration across the country. In Alberta, it's around 65%. But this is very discouraging because the vast majority of care is actually done at the community level, the physician and long-term care. Right? It's not done at the hospitals. I mean, we're very hospital-centric in this country, right? We think that the bastion of healthcare delivery is our hospitals. There is a major shift, at least I think there is, from reactive disease management to the whole the concept of proactive wellness. And I see this because of the dawn of the PHR, the personal health record. It's already kind of there, but more and more over the next, I'd say 5 years to be a little bit conservative, all of us will be managing our portions of our health, personal health, through tools, a personal health record that will be tapped into EMRs that are used at the physician and various hospitals. I hope it happens. It really does. Because that's going to sort of democratize healthcare, free up a lot more time for doctors and nurses and so on. But that's going to take time. And when you talk to people that are clinical delivery folks in the industry, I mean, they kind of chuckle at that, right? Because they deal with real issues every day. But it is going to happen. And right now, we're so focused on reactive disease management, meaning I've got a problem, I've got to rush to the hospital. But we're not putting together any time series data on patients or access to time series data. Here we have a type 2 diabetes problem across Canada. In fact, it's rampant around the world. But we're not collecting enough time series data on these people so that you can actually deal with me proactively, you know. And that's a big issue. It is really a big issue. And the cost of reactive disease management is horrendous on the healthcare system, and I'll show you how horrendous it is in a couple of minutes. So the other trend is that thank you very much, we're moving from 1.0 to 3.0 applications out there. Is anybody here, I wouldn't know out there in telehealth, right? But I'm not going to mention the name, but there are some very archaic point solutions out there in the acute care hospital marketplace. And these applications simply have to go. They really do. I mean, there's net new applications out there. We actually, in Branham Group, just put together a submission with the Canadian Medical Association as part of the economic stimulus package, that was part of the budget. In fact, Mary, I don't even know if anything was given out in that area. I have to check the budget when I get home. But we made a recommendation to the federal government that all current HISs in small to medium-sized hospitals need to be replaced, and we said it's going to cost you $2.1 billion. I mean, these HISs are archaic and old. They really are. And so there are 3.0 applications out there that can replace them. There will be a gradual shift of expenditures across the continuum of care, meaning they've got to go beyond the hospital sector. We've got to spend more money in the physician level and the long-term care and the community care. We simply have to, because that's where the bulk of the care is delivered. And we do see a trend in that area. In fact, how many of you are familiar with Canada Health InfoWay? Okay, yes, 3 or 4 or 5, let's say 1/3 of the audience. Canada Health InfoWay is a federal provincial body that's been entrusted with the responsibility of filtering out $1.5, now $2 billion to encourage the adoption and standardization of ICT across, right? We've even heard rumblings from that organization that more money needs to be spent in EMR, you know, the physician office, which is really cool. I don't know how many of you know this, but physicians in Europe, by the way, are mandated to use technology at their office level so you can capture data. And I wish we had that here. I really do, because then you could start building the foundation for EHR, at least the data input into it. So on that basis, CHI may be expanding. And thankfully as well, there is a gradual shift in understanding what ICT can do in the whole process of corporate goals and achievement. Now, I'm going to say something a little bit disparaging, I suppose, and I don't mean to, but when you compare healthcare as a vertical against other non-healthcare vertical industries, there has been a lack, a sort of an insular focus in that healthcare industry, not looking to best practices in other industries. I mean, if you look at retail and distribution, you look at discrete manufacturing, you look at all these other industries, they've solved 10 years ago many of the issues that the healthcare industry is addressing. I just had a very privileged discussion with Frank McKenna, who is co-chair of the Toronto Dominion Bank. And we were talking just a little bit about the banking industry, and I posed a question to him. I said, Frank, why don't we forget all this, this current investment in building a new pipe, if you will, right, for healthcare? I'm being very simplistic here. And why don't we just leverage the backbone that the banks are using? And he said, that's a cool idea. I mean, a lot of the challenges that the healthcare industry is facing have already been solved by some other vertical markets. And, and this is something in Canada we don't look at. However, having said that, the other thing that the healthcare industry does not do is actually understand a goal and an objective. They don't understand their assets. They don't understand how a specific asset could be a benefit to achieve a corporate goal and objective. And I don't criticize the people in that industry. They've got some critical things to deal with. That patient that just broke their arm. I mean, I'm simplifying things. But there has to be a requisite focus on this. And that's the only way we're going to control expenses in that particular business. I should point out, by the way, that I don't come from a healthcare background. Mary does. She has 13 years of medical background. But I come from several years of using the medical industry, and that's garnered my interest in understanding how ICT can improve it. And I'm going to use a hockey analogy, and I'm going to use another personal example if I could. My older son plays hockey and is now a 16-year-old, top 16-year-old with the Kingston Frontenacs in the OHL, and I'm very proud of that. You know, when you get old, you got to highlight you got to be proud of things. Anyways, at 11 years of age, he got this massive concussion, and I thought his hockey career was over, and this guy's a very talented kid. I took him to the Emerge of CHEO, which is the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, which was just a fantastic hospital, right? Those guys in Toronto Sick Kids are just fantastic. And it was during the time of SARS, right? So you can well imagine, right? So I took Eric to the front door of the Emerge. We had the first checkpoint, Charlie, right, where we had to fill out forms, literally fill out forms. Then we had another checkpoint. We had to fill out forms. Meanwhile, my kid's head and eyes are all bloodshot and dilated and all this kind of stuff. And then we went into another checkpoint, filled out another form, and then finally got to a station where somebody entered something onto a computer. And my boy at 11 years of age, which already was, I think, 5'11" at the time, said, "Dad, you're in this industry. Why aren't we entering data once?" And I remember calling Paul Saparis, who's president and CEO of HB Canada, and I asked him a question. I said, "Paul, why aren't we entering data once? Why aren't we doing that?" And then the second occurrence, I had a child that went through, my third boy went through leukemia. And he went through 2 years of it, went through 6 months of treatment in CHEO with all the stuff that they give them and put it in a tube and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, he had to come back. It recurred, and we had to take him down to Sick Kids and changes or give him a bone marrow transplant. But we had an example at CHEO, and this is a very real-life example, where the 4th floor was the cancer ward in the kids' hospital. And he was an outpatient at the time, so we took him to the 6th floor, and he had to have this device changed and all the gauzing and so on. And on the 4th floor, they wrote down in his file, he can't have any alcohol-based treatment because it drives him crazy. He's allergic to alcohol-based treatment, right? That's on a record. On the 6th floor, 2 floors up, they didn't have it. And so I remember standing in the nursing station, and I told her right in the middle, I said, "You do know that dentists cannot have any alcohol-based treatment?" And she said, yes, we know. And about 5 minutes later, all I could hear was a shrill and a scream, and I had to hold him for 3 hours, right, to calm him, right? But it also taught me about something about information flows in the healthcare sector, right? And it was disastrously poor at the time, and we don't know how to communicate that stuff. And when you look at other industries, we did work with a very large document management company recently on personalized one-to-one marketing. And these guys know how to capture and utilize information and maintain and transfer and communicate information to target. And so there's so many examples in other vertical markets where we can promote this kind of stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this exhibit. If we don't, here's the major challenge. This is one province. It is a major challenge in healthcare, and that's why we have to change the landscape. And that's why we believe that ICT is a component of changing that landscape. If we don't curtail, stabilize healthcare expenditures, healthcare in the province of BC in about a decade will consume 71% of the entire budget of the BC government. It's huge, eh, ladies and gentlemen? Isn't that fascinating? It's absolutely huge. And we need to find a way to make our healthcare delivery system more efficient, and we need to find a way to utilize ICT. And I was talking to Dom the other night and for dinner last night, and he's absolutely right. To do that, we have to understand what the problem is first before we can come up with a solution. And in good form, in every other segment of the vertical market, sometimes we build a solution and don't understand the problem before we build it. But this is a critical challenge, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of the industry going forward. Okay, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the eHealth vendors landscape, because I felt there are probably students in here or others that may have an interest in working for eHealth companies and be part of this changing the landscape. Now, I want you to read this. I'm just kidding. This is Shirley's seen this before. This is just a slice of a reasonably comprehensive database of 469 firms in Canada going after the eHealth marketplace. We're a country of 33 million people, and there's 469 companies that are addressing eHealth opportunities. What this component of the industry is not doing is understanding that what they have is not and should not be limited to the domestic market. They have brilliant technology, very innovative technologies. And so there's a whole host of opportunities with these firms, ladies and gentlemen, out there. And also on the end user side in the field of health informatics professionals as well. Of those 469 vendors, by the way, 61% are Canadian-owned, and includes the likes of the Clinicare, which is an EMR vendor, Managed Solution out of Quebec, X-Wave, a professional services company, and TELUS Emergis, which is now converted into TELUS Health, and TELUS Health is the largest player in Canada. There's also a whole host of very impressive multinationals that operate in Canada, and that's the Cerners of the world. AGFA here has a major presence in Waterloo, and of course the likes of McKesson, and this is just a drop in the bucket, and of course there are the likes of the Meditechs of the world that have not made any commitment to Canada, which is very, very unfortunate, but own a significant percent of the marketplace. So in terms of private ownership, of course, a lot of them are Canadian owned. Now, in terms of breakdown, if you're wondering where you could work based on this, as being a role player in the changing the landscape, 47% of those vendors are located in Ontario. The breadbasket of eHealth industry, in fact, is Ontario. Now, interesting backdrop, by the way, Ontario as a province is well behind many of its counterparts, the Albertas, the Quebecs, and the Newfoundland and Labradors, in terms of utilizing eHealth. But the bulk of the eHealth vendors are located in Ontario. Figure that. Primary business focus, just so you know, and I didn't know whether the students here specifically are working in particular areas, but 54% are working in the area of applications, specific applications. 19% on infrastructure, 27% in services, and we believe the services side will fundamentally increase because if you listen to data from other people, there's a shortage of something in the order of 3,000 to 4,000 change management strategists. There's a huge shortage of health informatics people to service the requirements in Canada. And in fact, the Research Institute here is doing a lot of work. We're very impressed with this group in terms of the research they're doing in this area and trying to understand the dynamic of the problem. And it's a big one. But there's huge opportunities, ladies and gentlemen, for that out there. I'm just going to skip this one. Just so you know, as a market research organization, this is what we do all the time. So I wanted to share this with you. We're constantly trying to understand market share information, and for the clinicians that actually work in the industry, you'll represent some of these applications. But the applications in the market are broken down into 4 areas, or we break them down into 4 areas. But you can see in finance and min, the bulk, a good percentage of those players are foreign multinationals, and a good selection are, in fact, are Canadian as well. But we break it down by financial management, financial decision support, HRS, and so on. Where there is solid penetration of Canadian vendors are for the Quebec ones, Logitech and Managed Solutions, by the way. Core clinicals, laboratory, pharmacy, RIS, PACS. As you can see, there are very few Canadian companies on this list. There's the Managed Solutions and so on, and I think that's it. But for the vast majority of the major applications used in hospitals in these areas are foreign multinationals. And given the fact that we have such a hotbed of Canadian talent in this area, I think that has to change as part of the changing the landscape. Advanced clinicals, this is a huge area of opportunity in hospitals. The order of communications, clinical support, CPOE, and EMR. Now, we're also getting data from a variety of people that CPOE is not being adopted as fast as it could be out there. But those are the players in those marketplaces. And so, by the way, when you look at this chart, we're doing, a market share and percentage. We do an extensive amount of surveying and talking to people out there in the marketplace. There's roughly 755 hospitals in Canada. The regions change all the time. Now Alberta only has 1. Ontario has 4. New Brunswick has 2. 6 months ago it was 7 and 8 and 8 and so on. But we're constantly surveying the marketplace. But that gives you an idea of what we do. Okay. Here's another critical piece of information for you. We talked a little bit about EMR. We need physicians in this country using the technology. And the only province that is using EMRs extensively is Alberta. And I think that's because the Alberta government offered a incentive package to adopt. But other than that, we've got less than 15% of physicians across the country that are using 55,000 physicians. Less than 15% are using technology. Now, you can just imagine where 70% of the care is delivered, that the technology is not being used. And here we are putting together a national EHR program, eHealth record program, but we won't have the data to populate this. It's really, really challenging. And so we need to address this, and hopefully we will in the next few years. Just in terms of companies, these are the top 10 companies based on last year's Brandon 300 data set. We're publishing in March 31st coming up, but those are some of the key players in Canada. These are Canadian companies, right? And it includes the TELUS and Emergis, which have merged. TELUS acquired Emergis. And in fact, they just recently acquired a piece of PHR technology from a local hospital in Toronto as well. But it includes the Texas, the Click, the Nightingale. Nightingale, by the way, is a EMR, but they're also a transcription company as well. So, and Clinicare is a major, Alberta-based EMR. So those are some of the Canadian companies that are doing reasonably well, some of the top ones. Now, what's not on there, by the way, you've all heard about Nortel. Nortel's gone through Chapter 11 and bankruptcy and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how much I can tell you sometimes. We know way too much. But the Nortel eHealth healthcare practice is well over $250 million in size. It's one of the most profitable within Nortel. They have a spectacular healthcare division. So, and we're kind of hoping that maybe it's created as a different company through this sort of bankruptcy. But the point of all this is Canada produces a lot of really cool applications. In fact, Nortel's success is more in the United States. They put in a patient discharge system for the Orlando hospital, and it's saving that hospital $10 million annually. And it's the whole issue of getting doctor sign-off to allow a patient to be discharged. It's all done electronically through ICT and through a process of alerts and then digital signatures, and it's done. The doctor doesn't have to, he or she doesn't have to come up the fourth floor and say, hey, Jack, you're okay, go home. And so they can be discharged at 10 o'clock, the beds and the room can be redone within 2 hours, and that bed now can be used by 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's fantastic. It really is fantastic. The reason I'm telling you this is Canadian companies produce a wonderful set of technology that we're not using. Okay, so the continuum of care. This is where I'm going to get a little controversial, by the way, on the continuum of care. This is a very simplistic model and breakdown of the continuum of care. It roughly includes hospitals, physicians, or the primary care, and long-term care and community care and everything else. I sort of put that in an entire bucket. I realize it could be broken down into subsectors, but it's really the continuum of care covers the three areas. Okay? 70% of ICT spend in Canada is focused on hospitals. 30% of ICT spend is on the primary care and the long-term care, community care, and all the rest. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to get and move from reactive disease management to proactive wellness and change the landscape under this scenario. Our country, and I'm only going to speak to our country in this situation because Denmark and Netherlands have actually normalized this a little bit better. But we're, for some reason, have been led to believe that the hospital is the major center of healthcare delivery. And as a result, they've been the major recipient of spend. Don't kid yourself and don't misinterpret me. The hospital is a very important area, absolutely, for acute care kind of requirements. When I broke my hip playing hockey, I had to go to the hospital. Now, waiting list was a problem. They didn't have the waiting list application in place, so I sat around for 8.5 hours before I was taking a look at. But that's another problem in Canada. I wish I was in France for that particular problem, right? Because France would have shuttled me through in 3 hours, right? But this is an issue. It's a huge issue, ladies and gentlemen. and we've got to fix it. There's dollars out there for ICT. By the way, on average, hospitals are only spending, or regions are only spending max 2% of their entire operating budget on ICT. The average manufacturing organization, the average retail establishment spends 4 to 5%. We're underinvesting. We really are. And we need to fix that. But even then, we're still consolidating all our ICT spend on the hospitals. And yes, it's important, but we're forgetting that there's a whole bunch of care is being delivered out there in the other area. So this is what it is. Hospitals, roughly, don't push me on this and say, hey, Wayne, it's really a 26.6. It's roughly 30% delivered care by the hospitals and 70% by the primary care, long-term care, and community care. But it's horrendously underinvested. And so we need a fundamental realignment of ICT spend, ladies and gentlemen. We need it. You know that curve on BC? That curve that shows 71% of the entire BC budget, provincial budget? If we don't actually move and realign our ICT spend, and if we don't move it from reactive disease management or reactive model to a proactive wellness model, where we take control, you and I take control of our own wellness, and we use technology to communicate with our clinical staff, and we don't have to go into the doctor's office to get our prescription refilled, and we can just do it online. I know I'm thinking of nirvana and the perfect world, but we see this in Germany all the time, right? All this stuff has been up and running. And there's spotty implementations of this in Canada, but it's not the same thing right across. But we need to really realign the ICT spend where the care is delivered. Now, our healthcare system are very acute care or hospital-centric. This is the traditional reactive healthcare model. It really is, and we've got to change that mindset. And by the way, I remember people talking about this 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, I had a brutal cough. I would never go to the Emerge. A lot of people do. I go to the clinic, right? But still, they don't have any time series data on Wayne. They don't know the last time I really visited there. They probably do, but they don't know what it was for, right? And, is Wayne a typical patient that has constant coughing issues, and maybe there's something broader? But this is where we are right now. But our system must reflect that new reality. And citizens, by the way, are becoming more informed and concerned about their health care. They really are. They want to be part of the solution. They definitely do. They want to be part of the solution. A good friend of mine whose child also went through cancer treatment, leukemic cancer treatment, actually, every time the doctor said this needs to be done, they would check and do their own research. And it's being done now because of the proliferation of a digital culture and web. Unfortunately, they're going to have nightmares about this. The time that they didn't, and their child was moved to Montreal for a specific thing, she died. And so people are increasingly becoming and want to be part of the healthcare solution. And so we are entering an era of the proactive wellness. And the role of ICT is key to transitioning from reactive to proactive wellness. It absolutely is. And there's efficiencies that can be gained by the utilization of ICT out there. But there are major, major obstacles. And that is, there's a lack of a consistent and fundamental approach to goals and objectives definition by the healthcare institutions. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where I'm going to be a little bit controversial. I think the healthcare industry has to start look at best practices in other industries, has to leverage. They really do. The talent is out there. I keep saying, if you've got a fundamental ICT issue within the healthcare industry, why don't you go hire the VP of IS from Walmart, because they've solved it 5 or 6 years ago. I don't know how many times, ladies and gentlemen, I've met healthcare people and saying, Wayne, we're unique. And I'm saying, no, you're not. Yes, you're concerned with delivering healthcare to that sick person, but you're not unique. The challenges faced by ICT are not unique. Right? I've got a point right at the bottom in terms of privacy. I can tell you with complete, being very straight and honest with you about it, privacy is not an issue or shouldn't be an issue in the healthcare system, with the exception of maybe a mental illness or a sexually transmitted disease that you don't want people to know. For the most part, the problems that we all face are similar. And I'm using the heart attack example for me at 51 years of age. I run a small business, right? I'm one of those classic examples of a heart attack. No, I'm not kidding. But that information should be provided to the key people right away, instantaneously. Dr. Wilbur Keelan, who headed up the Heart Institute in Ottawa, and he's now retired, and he's now a senator. I remember having a conversation with him. He said, Wayne, and I'm from Ottawa, if anybody knows the territory. He said, if you have a heart attack in Pembroke, we can air ambulance you in 45 minutes, right? But we have 3 hours to deal with you, and I don't have access to all the information about you. I tell you what I'm more concerned about is that you knowing my financial status more than my healthcare status, right? And this is an issue that we have to get over, ladies and gentlemen. We really do. Because I talked about world sourcing a little bit before. Healthcare is becoming a global industry. It's actually more efficient to me to go to the Muslim hospital in Mumbai to get a hip replacement than it is in Canada. It's becoming a global industry, and people need to have access to the information right away. And this is a major obstacle. And I keep telling people in healthcare, I don't care. Right? Now, it's not that this information needs to be accessible to everybody. Right? In Europe, we learn in the Netherlands and Denmark that what they do is it all starts with a doctor-patient relationship. The doctor says, okay, Mary, okay, Wayne, here's your complete data file. We're going to fill it out. It's going to be stored here. And these are the conditions upon which it's going to be stored. But let's agree which pieces of information you would allow to the next level of access, and the next level of access, and the next level of access. What are the business rules? And that's how it works. And we need to do that. Healthcare information, by the way, is not all that private, right? There's people, you've got type 2 diabetes? Great. Well, you're not a bad person, right? You've got a heart condition? Well, okay, I understand you're dealing with it. Let's move on from this privacy issue. It just drives me nuts. And you know what? Do you know which industry has dealt with the issue of privacy more than any other industry? Is the banking industry. And I keep asking people in healthcare, why aren't you talking to the VP of IS at Royal Bank to find out what the heck they're doing? I'm sure they are, but not enough, right? The challenges facing the healthcare industry are significant. There is a lack of understanding of the strategic role of ICT and outcomes. Complete lack of understanding. There are traditional silos and mentality that impede progress. Mary was reminding me the other day that in the province of Ontario, there is no connection between physicians and the LHINs, right? Although we've positioned the LHINs as the major pinnacles of healthcare expenditure and delivery, right? But the physicians have no relationship with the LHINs. Now, how ludicrous is that in terms of changing the landscape from reactive to proactive? There is an absolute lack of leadership in many respects. Is that my wife? Oh, okay. There's an absolute absence of leadership. Do you know why we're calling it a diabetes registry RFP in Ontario? This was told by the Ontario or eHealth Ontario organization. That's because that's the only way the politicals can understand and put some parameters in around it, is a diabetes registry. That's why. We have a fundamental problem in leadership. See, because we've been led to believe this way, or forced this way to think. For every extra dollar that we have, it has to go to Jamie's broken kneecap, right? Not into ICT expenditure. And I'm saying right now, you need to put that dollar into Jamie's knee, but you also need to bite the bullet and put more investment in the ICT infrastructure in the largest vertical market in Canada. And we don't have that leadership. A lot of our regional health authorities, a lot of our healthcare institutions are top-heavy, extremely top-heavy. There is an incredible lack of investment. I talked about that before. But there's also an inability to leverage best practices from other industries. I don't know what it is about the healthcare, but there's this sort of, we're unique. And they've built in and bought into this idea that we're complex, we're different from everybody else. The healthcare industry isn't. Really isn't. It's no different You use slightly different acronyms, but the product and the service is helping such and such with a particular issue. The procurement process doesn't allow for innovative solutions to rise to the top whatsoever, ladies and gentlemen. Several slides before I showed you some major applications that are installed in hospitals. My biggest fear is that there's not going to be much change in that in the next 4 or 5 years. And some of these things are big, bloated, expensive pieces of software. And we've got very innovative stuff that our firm is tracking. You know, this intercomponentware from Germany, it's brilliant stuff. If you have a requirement for a physician office, you can use their PXX. If you have a PHR requirement, you can use that. If there's a pharmacy application, you can use that. It's totally integrated. It's totally web-based. And there's a lot of that stuff that we can be used out there. It's a highly politicized environment. Highly politicized. We've got to break down those barriers. I've never seen such a politicized vertical market in my entire life. I thought there was competition between VPs of the manufacturing sector. Wow. Welcome to the healthcare. And this has a dramatic implication for decision making in that sector. And of course, I talked a little bit about privacy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there is light. There is light. And we've spent in Canada a lot of work in defining architectures and doing a lot of planning. Canada Health Infoway, by the way, has produced a brilliant blueprint for EHR deployment. In fact, it is the talk of the world. Germany says this is the blueprint we're using. Ontario, I have to believe, is doing, and their whole planning in the last couple of years is going to generate the kind of rewards we're looking for in terms of delivering chronic disease management and diabetes. There are new multi-point solutions on the marketplace. My only concern is that they won't get to you, right? Do you know, by the way, here's a comparison. Do you know the handgun legislation as a comparison? We spent upwards of $1 billion on that, right, of which $700 million was probably services. There is a solution application vendor in downtown Toronto that could have done the whole thing for $35 million, right? And so, yes, we don't invest enough in ICT, in healthcare, but nor do we do the research enough to identify the solutions that are cost effective. By the way, EHR, ICT, by the way, is increasingly being positioned as a critical piece of infrastructure. Everybody drives on roads, right? And that's considered infrastructure. What the ICT sector and the eHealth ICT sector has done is actually, position themselves as very complex and unique, which they shouldn't have. They're a commodity-based solution just like anything else, right? And ICT is part of infrastructure. EHR is driving awareness of the need to empower the continuum of care players through ICT. We know that at the end of the day, we want to have the ability for a doctor or a clinician of somewhere around the world to have access to our data. Global healthcare delivery is on the rise, as I mentioned before. And the power and value of data capture and manipulation is recognized as a major driver in healthcare delivery change and the integration of those silos. It is happening. Slowly, it is happening. Those practitioners in the industry don't see it happening. We see it happening because we have one step removed, and it is happening. It's just not happening fast enough. And the biggest concern is the overall impact on overall budgets. Healthcare is a huge vertical, and it's increasing at an astronomical rate. And we believe we need to change the landscape from reactive disease management to proactive wellness. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Wayne, now we give everybody else a chance to ask questions and make comments, so open it up. I'll start it out by asking a rather simple question. For example, where the cost in healthcare is 70% in the community side and 30%, we've got the reversal in the ICT. What kinds of steps can we do to change that? What do you see as the 2 or 3 top things that need to be done to change the situation?
Right. I think first of all, the physicians and the people in the long-term and continuum care have to be demonstrated. It has to be demonstrated to them through best practices what the value is in terms of investing in information communication technology. I don't think they know that. So on average, numbers like $10,000 or $15,000 per physician for EMR deployment. If you're a private practitioner, a GP, by the way, that makes $100,000 a year, which is what they make, right, with a $250,000 loan from school, a $15,000, hit in terms of EMR, unless you tell me how I can use it, I won't invest in it. So I don't think we've done a good job of opening the kimono and telling those organizations and individuals how we can use technology. I think that's a major one. Second, in terms of leadership, I think our public sector organizations need to make the requisite investment in ICT in this sector, because of the 2% of overall operating expenditures on ICT is insufficient. And so we've got to bite the bullet and increase it from 2 to 4%. Now, I haven't read the budget. I would have liked to have seen a major investment in ICT or healthcare infrastructure yesterday. So that's the second point.
When you talk to the leaders, first of all, there are in Ontario, for example, disincentives about investing in ICT because it goes against the administrative side of the budget, which is pretty bounded. If you talk to the leaders, they say, well, I can't get the funding. In other words, they're not, it seems to me, sufficiently connected into the strategic management of the organization to be able to affect that kind of change. But I'm not sure what the answer is to that one.
Well, do you know what? I think when it comes down to explaining the value and the outcome that you're going to get from investing in ICT, it has to happen not only at the individual physician level or long-term care facility, but all at the executive levels as well, right? There has to be a complete educational process here, and I don't think it's been done.
Questions? I like a microphone here, so is there another one here, Shred? Sure. I don't know.
Jessica's got one too.
Oh, okay, got you in the back. Great. Questions? Comments? People in the audience want to chat in, they'd be welcome to that. Here, I'll get one here.
Hi, Wayne. I just have a general question off topic from Canada. As you know, President Barack Obama he stated basically that within the next 5 years, they're going to computerize health records in the next 5 years. So given the highly bureaucratic nature of healthcare delivery in the United States, do you think this is too ambitious, or is it just politics as usual?
Well, it's extremely ambitious. In fact, I'm going to give ourselves in Canada, a pat in the back, because we've done a lot of the structural and planning and architectural work. We can get there faster than the United States, for sure. I mean, the challenges that the Americans face are much more challenging, inherently far more complex. And if they think they can do it in 5 years, we should be able to do it in 1, right? Trust me, the U.S. is a far more complex environment. Now, from a vendor point of view, it's a lot easier because you can sell directly to a hospital, right? The sales cycles are 3 to 4 months. But I think that's a very, very ambitious goal on the part of Barack Obama.
But, sorry, just to follow up, I guess it would be a huge potential market in terms of what Branham can achieve.
It would be, absolutely, it would be a huge marketplace. One of the things I didn't point out is that we have a great repository of vendors in Canada going after eHealth. The vast majority, by the way, are very parochial. They like to stay home. So 70% in most cases of their revenues are generated only in Canada, and it's a very, very small market. I mean, there are 44 EMR vendors in Canada alone, by the way. There's only 55,000 physicians, right? Clinicare just put an installation in Barrie, by the way, for all the physician offices, and they're not even an Ontario MD-mandated EMR, by the way, and we don't know if they're going to support the standards, but they captured all the physician offices in Barrie. So for these firms to excel, they really have to go to the international market, and there's huge opportunities in the States, there's huge opportunities in Latin America, there's huge opportunities around the world. So we actually have to change the mindset of the eHealth vendor in Canada to go export.
A lot of the questions or points you've made, such as fundamental problems of leadership, Canada maybe being slow to develop compared to other countries and other places around the world. Do you think it's based also on the fact that it's a heavily public sector here in Canada, and also how, although it ranges by province and some are slower and behind than others, do you see more of a shift towards the private sector in Canada? Is it going to remain depending on who the leader of the CMA is? Is that going to depend on what direction we're going? And is the healthcare industry slow, like moving mountains for development and advancing technology in other areas because of the public restriction? Only, you said 100 people sign checks, for example. Yeah,
I think there's two portions to your question. I think you're asking about public to private. Is that shifting? Yeah. And the second thing is the bureaucratic morass in Canada challenge. Let me tackle the last one.
For business and new businesses coming in.
For business. Right. Let me tackle the last one first because it's dear to my heart. I recently did an analysis of the total number of people employed by public sector all levels in Canada, federal, provincial, municipal. we could support a population based on the number of people that work in the public sector, a population of 90 million people in Canada. Now just think about that for a second. Just think about that. We're a 33 million population country, and we could support a country of 90 million people. We simply have too many people working in the public sector, right? It's not an environment that encourages innovation. It's not an environment that encourages expediency. It's an environment that encourages a politically astute Royal Commission decision-making on things, and it slows it all the way down. The average sales cycle for an eHealth vendor that has a profit objective in Canada is anywhere from 12 to 18 months. It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. The procurement process is nutso. Is absolutely nutso. Can you just imagine if you're an eHealth vendor responding to an RFP, you're fundamentally not allowed to call or talk to the target end user, because that would be perceived as having a competitive advantage. You can't do that. You know, so in effect, you put into a proposal and you don't really know whether the proposal is reflecting the outcome that the client is looking for. And there's a lot of additional costs built into the whole procurement and bidding process. There are a lot of costs at bidding in the inefficiency of the bureaucracy associated with this. The number of people employed that are non-clinicians in healthcare in this country are astronomical. So on that side, it's very, very, very inefficient, right? And as a result of that inefficiency, I'm very concerned about the plight of some of these eHealth vendors that have wonderful applications, because they don't have, in some cases, 12 to 18 months, right? They have venture capitalists ripping their throat out if they don't have a sale in the first 6 months. And it's really, really, really challenging. And if you're now a Canadian going into the U.S. marketplace, Barack Obama, by the way, as part of his presidential electoral campaign, is going to become very insular in terms of becoming more of a Buy American. Yes, I know he's assigned NAFTA and so on. He's got to be very careful. But the procurement process in the United States is going to be very, very under the cover Buy American. Right? So it's going to be very, very challenging, right? And we've got to get over that hump a little bit. Does that answer some of your? Is it going to be going over that hump, or is that what's blocking it because of the bureaucracy being a public sector, or is there a shift you see toward? I mean, there is some sort of privatization in certain areas that exist right now. There absolutely is. And for instance, it's far more easier to get an MRI these days. I mean, living in Ottawa, I can just go across the river in Quebec and order up an MRI, get it a lot quicker. So I think there is natural privatization that's going to happen, delivering a service that people are willing to pay an extra buck for. I think that's going to happen, and I think that's healthy. By the way, once you open it up, you also open up to competition, so that also manages the price point, doesn't it? And so I think that's healthy in certain areas, right? It is. In fact, there's a hospital in Calgary, by the way, that's exclusively focused on hip replacements. And I forget what it's called. Mary, do you remember? The one, it's exclusively focused on only hip replacements, of which I need one, right? And so I could go there, probably pay an extra $1,000, or I don't know what it is, and get the job done. Meanwhile, I'd be on the waiting list here in Ontario for 6 months. So I think those types of things are healthy and good, and they'll offer a little bit of competition in the marketplace. So I think there will be in that direction. In certain select areas of healthcare delivery, not the acute stuff though, right? Not the acute stuff. In fact, I wouldn't want it that way. I'm safer knowing that it's a little bit more pedantic in that sense.
We have a question from the remote audience.
The question from the web audience is, what is the role of the consumer in chronic disease management?
That's such an excellent question. The incidence of type 2 diabetes, right, or chronic heart disease or anything like this, at the end of the day, the physician, the nurse, the clinician can only do so much for you in this area, can only do so much. And what is failing in our system is the fact that the consumer believes it's 100% the problem of the clinician. You need to fix me right away. Just give me that magical pill. And there has to be a mind shift. Absolutely has to be a mind shift. And so in the case of the consumer in things like chronic disease management, I'll relate it in terms of a PHR, a robust PHR. As you know, Microsoft has a product out there, Google has a product out there, ICW has a product, TELUS Health has a product. These are going to be fundamental tools that are tied in to data about you. and you're going to be able to manage this on a day-to-day basis. You'll be able to track all the readings from your glucometer for type 2 diabetes, for instance, right? And by the way, when you insert that data, your doctor or clinician or the person responsible for managing your file will be able to see that and manage on a regular basis. So you can see the role is going to change rather dramatically over the years.
Jake?
Good afternoon. I guess one's always looking for solutions in all of this, and it seems that that the changes that what could be perceived in Canada would be rather slow-moving, and you've got some of the evidence for that. Would there be a better opportunity by selecting an area? I've sometimes talked to Dominic about Framingham, but something that represents a region, an area, and with the combination of private and public ventures to actually model what can be done, and there be huge incentives made to actually implement this in the ideal way. And then with the set of incentives, then to demonstrate to the Canadian public, institutions, governments, what direction to go. Because, I'm afraid that that all the ruminations and consternations will not get it done, especially when you have many physicians who, well, I guess what's the statistic? Only 20% of physicians are really buying into this, and part of the reason for it is that they perceive their role more as patient care. Leave ICT out of all of this. Just let me talk to patients. I don't know. I've gone on a little bit. How about some thoughts?
Okay. I'm going to answer it in sundry different ways. A good friend of mine is our family doctor, and he's left the family practice because it's just brutal. It is absolutely brutal. I asked him what his normal day was like, and it's 30% paperwork, which is not necessarily online, and the other 70% was jam-packed with 10-minute, 10-minute appointments, just laying in a assembly line, people coming through. And what his major frustration was the fact that he could never sit back, think about it, and look at his base of clients from a perspective of, okay, how can I move the 100 type 2 diabetes clients that I have in my 1,000, right, and be more proactive about their wellness going forward, right? And so I think technology can help us in that area a little bit, where some of the healthcare providers can actually, with technology and data at their fingertips to do some analysis, actually be more proactive about their connection with their client and suggesting certain things. Your suggestion about putting up a model prototype environment is an excellent one. It's been discussed. In fact, we put a proposal into the Nova Scotia government to create the healthcare physician office, hospital room, and long-term care facility of the future. And we were suggesting, let's bring in all the technology, make it a workable environment on very non-acute kind of scenarios, and to test this, to really test it and see how it would work. And so those are concepts that we have to really make it work, because at the core of your question in that area is what I said before, and that is the people that are being asked to invest in technology, specifically the physicians, really have never been told about how this can benefit them. They don't know what is the case study, what is the success study in that area. So that's probably answered a little bit, or a little bit of perspective on your question.
If I could just pick up on that. And I'm asking this somewhat self-servingly, is why don't we do it here? Why don't we take this area, this LIN, even our region, and do something? I mean, why not? First, we've got huge informatics strength, huge computer capabilities in this area. I think in terms of family health teams, we've got the province's #1 family health team here. We have hospitals that probably could be coerced into participating. And so why don't we actually do something?
Right. I don't know how to react to that, but with the exception of saying yes. Now, having said that, I didn't talk a lot about the Ontario eHealth plan and the whole chronic disease management, and specifically as it relates to diabetes. If you read that one and review that one-page schematic, it is absolutely brilliant. I can see where they're going on it, because it will engage the consumer, it will engage the physician. But we do know that there has been discussion about using certain pieces of this region to highlight that as a model. And we'd like to see a lot more of that done, because then you could replicate it. And I think that's so important. But I'm going to tell you right now that the major challenge that you face is vision and leadership. And we have a problem in that area. We really do. We actually have the resources to support that kind of thing, but people don't know how to allocate it because they haven't done the goals and objectives review, right? So we have some fundamental things that we need to do. But my quick answer is yes.
I thought, in fact, the secret weapon was Mary here, that moving her into the region,
Yeah.
it's just going to transform everything,
It
isn't
could be,
it?
could be.
It's sort of the philosopher's stone, change lead into gold. But this is I'd like to just take a quick line of thinking here. Just last week, I read the report of the National Academies of Medicine in the United States, chaired by Bill Stead, and a lot of really important key people in health informatics were on it. And that was really targeted at the Obama question, like, should we invest, and how much should we invest in which aspect of the eHealth, or HIT as they call it there. And the conclusion of the National Academies is similar to a conclusion that you've reached. And that is that many of the systems aren't ready for implementation. They are poor interfaces, they are old technology, they are unintegrated systems, in fact, that have been pieced together by many acquisitions with the result that it's not ready for real time. That's one part of the thing. And, on the other hand, we have whatever we have, and even what's there is not being used. We had just the last talk? Shirley can tell me, or the one before it with Bill Stead. Was that the last one or the one before? You go back on the web and see it. Bill Stead came here and he told us what he did at Vanderbilt. And he put in a system related to being able to get people off respirators. And it was so good that it went like wildfire through the institution. They adopted it. So when you got really good stuff, physicians aren't resistant. People aren't, saying, I won't do that. It's crap we're putting in front of them a lot of times, and they're resisting appropriately. So how do you bring this together? I mean, how do we get decent systems? How do we change that procurement system that won't allow innovation in?
Well, there's a couple things at play. One is that we don't invest enough. The 2% to 4% is a challenge. One is the procurement system is so insular that you can't expose really good top-notch technologies and put them in a prototype situation. We've got to change that process. 3 is leadership is not all that visionary. It's fundamentally sound. 4th is that although you and I know, because we do research in this area, a lot of the people in the healthcare institutions don't understand the absolute age of some of the technology that's currently used. That's not EHR ready, if you will, right? The government in Ontario is launching a significant CDM and diabetes registry project, right? But a lot of the technology that need to be tapped in are very old and archaic, and I don't know how they're going to do it. And I'm not too sure whether they've done the requisite pre-research to understand what the challenges will be and understanding the problem first before delivering, and that's part of the problem.
If we could take off on Jake's suggestion with the magic of Mary being thrown into the region and a few other things. One thing that could be done is to get an extra policy ability to procure. Right. So you really do bring innovation. We've talked about the work that Bill Tatham has done with his company. Create an incredibly innovative system for the health system, built around customer relations management ideas. He can't get it anywhere because it hasn't been used in 3 places yet. He can't even give it away.
Right.
Well,
so, the same is true. I mean, you take a look at the Anywhere Group from New Brunswick, which has a portal product that's used in Port Huron. Now, someone can argue it's not all that earth-shattering, but in the same token, it's a piece of Canadian technology that's very efficient in doing the job. And when I talked to the president of Anywhere Group, he was completely frustrated with the procurement process, right? And he was saying, why are international firms with lesser capability that's addressing the problem being utilized in these environments? And I think we've got to get through that. But keep in mind, by the way, that the public sector is moving towards more bigger environments, centralized procurement, and the innovative companies won't see opportunities. Even at the federal government level in Ontario, in Ottawa, by the way, there is a whole process towards common application. So that means the SAPs of the world will win, but that's pretty big, soft bloatware. And so a lot of the SMEs that are addressing opportunities for the federal government will not see the opportunity whatsoever. And there's a number of factors at play.
And we'll ship the money out, basically, is what's happening. Go ahead, come in.
Okay, I just have a quick comment, not so much a question. You mentioned that there's a shift towards a proactive approach towards healthcare, and also that the issue of security is one major hurdle. in the implementation of ICT systems. I think what the biggest problem in terms of basically public awareness of ICT systems is people sort of fear new technology when it comes out, especially when it comes to health. There's popular perception in media and about how insurance companies could possibly use your health information to basically cut you back because of predisposed conditions or something, genetic conditions or something like that, how it could affect your job or how it could affect your personal life and something like that. So I think what we need is basically a public awareness campaign, and that, I think, with time will solve the bureaucratic issue where the public will pressure the governments to basically implement these systems, and they should know that there are major, huge benefits to these systems.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we have to be very careful that personal information, healthcare information, is not used in a negative way for promotional purposes or for business and so on. You're absolutely right, and we have to protect that. But it's roughly analogous to the credit card situation. You go to a restaurant, and you're more at risk by signing something and giving somebody your credit card than you are, ordering something online with your credit card, because the technology does exist to protect that. But you're absolutely right. The awareness level needs to be there. It really does, and that's an extremely good comment. By the way, I did see, in fact, Shirley and I last year saw a tremendous application by TeliaSonera in Sweden. And just to put it into place, do you remember, Shirley, the TeliaSonera? Well, this is a home care application where it's an elderly couple where one is the primary caregiver, the other one is suffering from dementia and so on, and they're located up north in Sweden. There's no way they can get to a local hospital, and this is where it's a beautiful case of technology being used to deliver a service to an elderly couple, and they're nowhere in northern Sweden. I think they're about a mile away from the nearest neighbor. And the wife came on. She's the one that is not affected by any illness, and she's watching the husband. And she saw us online with 15 people, and she thought this was the greatest experience to actually be talking to people. But at the same time, all the vitals are being calculated, and there's a video connection between the two. And I think we have to use more of that technology. And it's once people engage it, as Dom says, we'll use it.
Only 1 or 2 minutes, so we give Mary just a chance to make a comment.
I just wanted to take off of what you were saying around there's been so many ruminations and we're doing lots of talking, and having worked in healthcare, and I do share your sentiment that we're not moving ahead far enough, and we're building towards becoming our healthcare system becoming unsustainable. And I think we do need to have some grassroots movements where we have the obtain, lobby, and get a groundswell of support for such innovation and demonstrate its success. And that way, maybe we can start replication. And I think chronic disease management is one of the key areas that we can actually build on that and really do some good demonstration projects. So let's get the proposal going.
Yeah.
Well, Wayne, I'll turn back to Shirley.
All right. Well, it's always my pleasure to listen to these seminars, and it's also equally a pleasure to thank our speakers. So, Wayne, thank you on behalf of all of us for coming and giving your insights into the ICT and eHealth industries and vendors. I always learn a lot whenever you speak, and again, it was true today. So this is a small gift as a token of our appreciation. I hope you will come back and listen to our next seminar on February the 25th when Brendan Seaton from iTac Health will speak very much along on this same sort of topic. So I hope you come back and listen on that day and see us again. So thanks again for coming.